Salvation Army could be one. How about an informal resource? Informal resource.
Like a family member?
A family member, a church. You know, a church may not, they may have a food bank, they may not, but they may have some money set aside and they might say, I can help you pay your utility bill one time in a year. They may have that, but they may not be able to help you a second time. So that would be an informal resource. How about if you needed medication? Drug companies sometimes offer free prescriptions or very reduced prescriptions. So that would be a more formal resource. I'm going to want you to be able to explain to me the difference between paraphrasing and summarizing. Paraphrasing and summarizing. I want you to be able to define empathy. Define empathy. I may give you something, a little blurb that a client has said, and ask you to, I might give you an example, and I might ask you to paraphrase a response to that. Paraphrase a response to whatever I give you. Why, if a client has a lot of problems and they come to you, why would you choose a problem that has high potential for change to work on first?
It shows their strength, like it'll give them motivation to keep going.
Yeah, they could be successful at that. Shows your strength, gives motivation to move on. I can do this, maybe I can do something else. Builds their confidence, doesn't it? What is EBP? Anybody? EBP. Evidence-based practice. You know what that is? I may ask you to provide an example. And one of the things, and I've tried on this test to bold if I ask for an example or a definition or whatever, so you'll notice. But I may ask you to give me an example of an open-ended question and a closed-ended question. Somebody give me an example of a closed-ended question. Right now.
How was your day?
How was your day? Well, actually, if you said, was your day good, that would be an even better closed-ended question, wouldn't it? They would say yes or no. And that's kind of what you think of as a closed-ended question. They can answer it yes or no. But what would an open-ended question be about their day?
Tell me about your day.
Tell me about your day. They can't say yes or no, can they? They could say it was good, it was bad. Tell me more. How was it good? How was it bad? Start with that open-ended question. I want you to give me an example of a tried and true question. We had a whole list of those, tried and true questions, different kinds of questions. One tried and true question that I can think of is, what brings you here today? But there are lots of them in your book. If I give you an example, I say, my grandson called and his dogs have just had 9 puppies. And he called and said he didn't have enough money to feed the puppies, to feed the mom. And I got really upset about that. And I thought, oh, how could you not have money to feed that dog? She's got to feed all those puppies and blah, blah, blah. I might give you an example, not that one. but I might give you an example of something like that and ask you to reflect those feelings. Now, what was I feeling? Reflect the feelings I just gave you in that example.
Frustration.
Frustration, yes. I might have been a little anxious for the mother of the puppies, so forth. What in social work sets forth the values, principles, and standards for our profession? We have a whole group. Code of ethics, thank you. Did a presentation on that,
What was it?
the code of ethics.
Sets the standards for.
Mhm. Social work profession, the values, principles, and standards for our profession. I might ask you for some sources of clinical intuition and hunches. What are some of those? Anybody? We talked about that.
Can you repeat that question?
Yes. Some sources of clinical intuition or hunches. We said you could get it from research, it could come from experience. There were a number of ways. Yes.
Like if you were talking with somebody and you felt that they had some sort of like disorder,
Mhm.
but you didn't know for sure.
Mhm, mhm. And where did that come from? Was that based on your experience, or was it something that you had read?
The DSM.
The DSM perhaps? You thought, I better check this out? Yeah. So it could have been personal experiences and beliefs. I mean, it could have come from a lot of sources. So I want you to name some of those sources that you might get that from. I'm going to ask you to list a couple of methods of assessment, of formal assessments. Now, when we think about assessing somebody, how do we do that? One of the things, we've done one in here almost every day recently. We have what to the client?
Interviewed.
Interview. That's right. So interviewing is one. And when we've been interviewing that client, what do we hope the social worker is doing? Is she observing that client?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it really works both ways. The client is probably observing the social worker too. But observations. Sometimes we use tests. Sometimes we look at life records. I mean, all kinds of ways. But I'm going to want you to be able to tell me about a couple of those. A couple of those.
Wouldn't the genograms be, is that one of them or no?
It could be, yes. Yes, it could be. That would be like a test or a review of a life record, perhaps. That
Okay.
would be ongoing. But yeah, I would give you credit for that. What are some nonverbal ways a social worker can demonstrate to the client that he or she's listening to them? Nodding.
Eye
Yeah.
contact.
Eye contact.
Support his arms.
Yes. Gestures, your body posture, all kinds of ways, really. I want you to be able to define a scaling question and provide an example. So somebody do that for me. What's the scaling question?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you today?
Yep. Okay. So she's also provided an example, didn't she?
Oops, sorry.
That's okay. It's really a desire to ask that client to estimate the intensity of something. You know, if you're in pain and you go to the ER, they want to know on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain level? It's kind of like that. I want you to be able to tell me a couple of nonverbals that might indicate that the client is not very comfortable with what's going on in the interview. What might that client do?
Checking their watch.
Check their watch? Yes. They might look around the room. They might do what I'm doing right now, crossing their arms.
Fidget. Fidget.
Fidget? Yeah.
Tap their foot.
Tap their foot, that's right. According to the book, tell me some things that you can do to help clients see things differently. A whole chapter on seeing things differently.
If they're really negative, you can pull out some strengths and try to focus on that.
Mhm. what kind of question did we ask one day?
Is it like the
Miracle
magic question?
The miracle question.
That's what it
This
is.
would be a great example to use the miracle question. You know, creating alternative perspectives, brainstorming, whatever, to get there, using role plays. And developing a working hypothesis or hunch. Kind of reading between the lines, using your own experience, your clinical experience. There are 6 classic questions, and they were in your chapter. We didn't discuss them one by one, but they're often used in interviews to organize the assessment agenda. And I'm going to want you to know those 6 questions
6 classic questions to do what?
to organize your assessment agenda. And I'm going to go over them with you. The why question, why has the client come to you? Why have they come today? Who is the client? If you've got a whole family, you know, there may turn out to be one person who's more the client than the others. You may have a mother and a child, and you thought the child was the question, the client, it turns out to be different from that. What do I want to know from them? How can the client be actively involved in designing the assessment process? So how can the client be involved in this process? And where should that initial assessment take place? Should I go to their house? Should I go to their work? Should we meet in my office? Where should it take place? And then when will we have enough understanding to begin the plan and the contract? Now, with our client, Chris, Mr. Williams over here, we determined last Wednesday, that what? We had enough information to do what?
Start goal setting and
Start talking about, you know, what are we going to do now? Start planning, start beginning to plan, come up with a plan, and then a contract. So today, we're gonna begin with him. Well, one of the fill-in-the-blanks that I have that I want you to know is a bibliography. And that is, I think you're gonna know these. We've talked about miracle question, we've talked about ethical dilemmas and what we do with those, about ethics, about triggers for people that might produce a certain kind of behavior, contracts, objectives. I don't think you're gonna have any problem with the fill-in-the-blanks. Okay, any questions? Any questions?